Welcome back to another video, guys, and today I'm going to show you guys how to EQ heavy metal guitars like a pro. But before we jump into the tutorial, if you would like for me to mix your music, shoot me an email at divinemotherstudios@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys with details of your project. Okie dokie, guys, so I am in the midst of just finishing up this mix for a client of mine. They are a technical death metal band called Psionic, and I thought it'd be really cool to show you guys how I achieved the guitar tone using very minimal EQ moves and very little processing for the final result of this mix. And now I will preface this with a caveat that you guys must start with really good source tones to begin with to be able to accomplish very minimal processing on your guitar tones. So in this case, for me, that is going to be using the STL Tone Hub by STL Tones. And I just picked a preset with a PV6505 and a Mesa Boogie cabinet. And I just decided to take that as a starting point and just tweak the tone until it fit my liking. And that is pretty much it. There is no other processing on this particular plugin. Everything else is being done on the plugin chain that I have in front of it. So let me just quickly play you guys what this sounds like with no processing whatsoever. Now, moving on to my processing, I am doing very minimal EQ on this SSL channel. Everything below 100 Hertz and below is being cut off, and everything above 12K is being cut off. The reason for these two moves is because I want the bass to take care of bass things, and I want the guitar to take care of guitar things. So anything that is really below, let's say 80 Hertz, is really gonna start to conflict with the bass guitar and the kick drum. And regarding the 12K cut, I want that high end reserved a lot of the times for the drum cymbals. From there, I just wanted the guitars to have a little bit more mid-range and intelligibility. So I took the liberty of boosting 7.5 kilohertz for about a dB. This is pretty common for me if I find the guitar's a little bit too dark. A lot of the time, 8K tends to be an area I tend to look at a lot. And if I want some more mid-range, that can anywhere be between 1K to 2.5K. In this case, since the guitar's tuned a little bit lower, I went ahead and jumped around 1.5K and I boosted about a dB there. And I don't have anything else on the EQ going from there. That is pretty much it. So just 3 moves in total, 1, 2, and 3. Now, you may have the inclination to start jumping around anywhere between 200 and 500. I really want you guys to be careful with that area because the moment you start hollowing out that frequency area, you're gonna notice that your guitars get really thin and they don't have a lot of that punch and a lot of that girth that we're used to hearing in our metal guitars. So just keep in mind, the moment you start looking around that 200 to 500 Hertz area, you start digging that out with regular EQ, it's gonna be a problem. But I'm gonna show you guys in a little bit how to get around that with some multiband compression. From there, I am just taking care of a lot of the swishy sounds. That's what I like to call them. So any of the sounds that really have that kind of I'm just kind of taking out. So that's anywhere between 3K and 4K. Just remember that, between 3K and 4K, even up to 6K sometimes. You want to look in those areas because a lot of that is just going to be a lot of these weird whistles that you get from heavily distorted guitars. Now, that 3K to 6K range is critical for vocal intelligibility. A lot of the S's, the T's, the P's, a lot of the spittiness of the vocal is in that range. So you want to play a balancing act between the guitars and the vocals. Problem is that if you nuke this area in the guitars, your guitars just end up sounding like this weird wet blanket, and they don't have a lot of that aggression that we need out of our guitars. But if you leave them all in there, it's going to start getting in the way of your vocals and you're going to start having to fight against each other. So let me just quickly play you guys a section that exemplifies those whistles. And then I'm going to bypass it as it's playing so that you guys can hear those whistles be reintroduced because they're not really noticeable right up the bat. So as you can tell, when I bypassed the plugin, it just sounded like a whistle from an airplane. That's actually the best way I could describe it. Just kind of like that psh kind of sound. It just was reintroduced. And you can tell that I didn't totally luke it out. I just kind of, brought it down a little bit to a more manageable level and just left it at that. And again, you guys don't want to nuke this area because the aggression in your guitars will completely disappear, but you do want to tame them so that it leaves room for your vocal tracks. Now let's circle back to the low mid area between 200 and 500 hertz. This area is critical for the power in your guitars. There's a lot of resonances here that are going to conflict and make a lot of your mixes sound muddy if you don't take the extra time to make sure that these frequencies are taken care of. Now, multiband compression is my preferred method. If you just take an EQ and you just kind of hollow it out like this, your guitars are going to sound very thin and very nasty sounding and not very good at all. But multiband compression allows them to still be there when they're necessary, but then to reduce them when they're not necessary. And a lot of the time, that is going to be when it comes down to palm mutes. So let me go ahead and play you guys this. So, you know, a little bit boxy, a little bit weird sounding, almost a bit muddy. And when I had this engaged, it didn't lose any of its power, but that kind of boxiness kind of got drawn back a little bit and allowed for it to have a bit more clarity and power, in my opinion. So that is something that I use on pretty much every heavy metal guitar track that I've ever gotten for a mix. Now, I'm gonna leave you guys with one little secret here that I don't know anyone else really does other than myself and maybe Jordan Valeriot over at Hardcore Mixing, and it's to use multiband compression on your guitars. If you're a beginner though, I highly advise against doing this because it's gonna take a while for you guys to really hear what's happening here. Let's just take a quick listen to what this compressor is doing, and I want you guys to pay attention to how it acts on the palm mutes, but it also smooths out a lot of the higher notes as well. So as you can tell, a lot of those palm mutes were being contained even a little bit more, but those sweet pick guitar licks there were sounding a little bit harsh without the compressor smoothing them over and kind of controlling those upper end frequencies there. Now, the drawback to using broad range compression on your guitar tracks is that they shrink the footprint in your mix. So, they're going to sound really wide without it, but if you really paid attention with the compressor, they kind of just got brought in a little bit, kind of like just ever so slightly. Now, could be an aesthetic choice. The guitars, while they were good, were kind of just all over the place a little bit. So again, I'm just constricting their footprint just ever so slightly. However, this does come at the expense of pick attack. Fortunately, when you have broadband compression like this, you do lose a little bit of that pick attack in there, but I felt it was a good compromise for this mix. And then after that, really, ultimately, I just have a limiter to, limit guitars. And it's, again, really only acting on any errant peaks that I may have missed with any of the other plugins that I have in my chain. That's pretty much it. It's just kind of lopping a little bit off, about dB, maybe 2 dB, to give me a little bit more headroom on my compressor. Let's go ahead and play all of this for you guys without any plugins going, just the amp simulator. And then I'm gonna play you guys the mix, my plugin chain, so that you guys can hear what the difference is. All right, so that was without any processing whatsoever. And let me go ahead and pop in the plugins back in and now check out the mix with the processing. A lot more up front, a lot more mid-range, a lot less of that weird fizziness that was going on. It almost sounded like the hollowness that was there without the processing has been removed, and it's just much more closer to what a finished record is going to sound like. So as you can see, I used very, very minimal processing to accomplish this guitar tone for this mix here, and I think I got really good results just using a great amp simulator, minimal EQ, a little bit of compression, and a little bit of limiting. If you guys are notching out all kinds of crazy stuff and, doing shit like this and fucking going like this and, doing shit like that, it's not conducive to getting a very professional, good tone there. I really don't recommend that you guys do that, and just Start over if you find yourself doing that, and get a great source tone right off the front. You'll save yourself a headache, and then you can just use minimal processing after that. So if you found this video helpful, give me a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.